Hello or namaste. Welcome to Atypical Dikkate, a conversation podcast. I'm your host Soumya, back after a break with more queer, neurodivergent, and disabled voices. This podcast is not just a means to chronicle the stories and experiences of queer disabled folks, but it is also a journey to build solidarity, queer intimacy, and a community. It is a journey to find a sense of belongingness and a space where queer and disabled folks like me can share our unique joys as well as challenges and feel less alone in a world where we face constant invisibilization. This is a way of taking up space according to our own terms. Today, I have Jasmin with me. Jasmin is a development practitioner. She's a learning and knowledge management professional who has worked on various human rights campaigns and currently working on policy design and implementation by representing the need for disabled Muslim women's point of view. She is a co founder of Man Samvad, an initiative building mental health support from the intersectional lens in higher education institutions in collaboration with the Maharashtra state government. She is also a co mentor at Society of Gender Professionals. Jasmine is a queer Muslim feminist who lives with ADHD, auditory processing disorder, and PTSD. She is currently undergoing her diagnosis for autism. She believes that her story is a form of reclamation where she takes pride in her faith and identities true to herself. She loves dancing and thriving close to nature, and her pronouns are she, her, they. Hello, Jasmine. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Hi Soumya, thank you so much for having me. I am surviving trying times but getting through. Yeah.
I think I relate to that bit. Most of us are leading similar lives. So, yeah, once again, thank you so much for joining me. And without much ado, we'll just get into the conversation. And I was really interested, like everything you have done in the sphere of mental health and, Muslim rights, especially given the current political scenario. So, I would like to, open the conversation and ask you, do you want to talk about being a queer Muslim woman and what that means to you? What are the challenges you face and how you navigate life as someone who lives at these intersections given the current socio-political climate in India?
My experience changes as the social context does. This includes not just my sexual orientation but also my cultural identity and my disability. I have always felt like an outcast, especially amongst the practicing Muslims because I am a non practicing one. I'm seen as a less authentic. For others, I don't look like Muslim. And maybe sometimes I also have received that I'm not like other Muslims. Recently I went public on my Instagram profile and called myself queer and posted my photographs from the Himachal Queer Pride Walk. In a few days, one of my college mates sent me this video that talks about din and dunya and how I should turn to Allah. Then another friend of mine, practicing Muslim again, who is in a live-in relationship with a Hindu guy. When I told her that I'm queer, she said, "I will pray for you. I'm sure you will live a normal life. I don't want you to go through all that." But she knows that I'm a neurodivergent, and she's proud of me that I made a decent career with all challenges that I live with. So I'm alienated with from Muslim communities that would not accept me as queer, and from queer communities with a perceived notion that I don't look disabled. I've always had a longing for places and communities and people where I don't have to defend myself, or my identities are not contradictory but seen in intersections where I get to be my full self or all of me. Yeah.
I relate to whatever you said a lot, though our positionalities are very different, and I can't ever imagine, um, you know, what you are going through given our current scenario. But that feeling of being a misfit everywhere, Like I see posts of queer celebrations, and I can't relate to it. As in, like, for me, social situations, social interactions, they are a lot. And I just don't feel like um, I fit in there, and I can't perform my queerness. So, yeah, I get that feeling. Like, throughout my life, I think I've never really fit into any groups. Um, but yeah, I just don't know how else to articulate it, but I wish people would understand that, we live at these intersections, and they are not isolated. Like, I consider myself neuroqueer, so my queerness, my neurodivergent brain, they are very much interconnected, and I can't separate the both of them. So yeah, speaking about neurodivergence, one of the things that, while I was doing my research, I'm sure many of us undiagnosed folks had to dig up on our own and try and find professionals who are willing to dig with us. So during my research, I realized that many women, or those who were assigned female at birth, were either given borderline personality disorder or bipolar disorder as diagnosis. And later on, when they connected with the community, they realized about their neurodivergence, and they went ahead and sought an autism diagnosis. So they were surprised to, realize that, yeah, they were autistic. So would you like to talk about that, how this pathologization, and also, I think, gender bias that exists in the mental health field, how that stigmatizes women or those who are assigned female at birth when it comes to even, like, getting these diagnoses and support?
Yes, I think I've been struggling to get the diagnosis for about 3 years now. And it was back in 2019 when I was in Canada. I was working on some journalism projects where I couldn't turn in my assignments on time. I would freeze for days in a row, and I decided to, take help because I thought it was my brother's demise that I was finally processing. I was also writing a 5,000 word article on rehabilitative justice. So my therapist thought there are various factors, my past trauma, the weather, and I was in a completely new country. Then, after a few sessions, he suggested that I might as well look for what is ADHD. It was completely new to me, and I did. It was so relatable. He asked me to go through the checklist of pre diagnosis, where it means you are considered for the diagnosis itself. And later I was suggested the full diagnosis because I qualified in the pre-diagnosis. So it was quite an expensive affair, 1,000 Canadian dollars. I couldn't have afforded, so we decided that we will apply tools that worked for ADHD, and that's how I survived without formal accommodations. And most of the times misunderstood around the people I worked with, or the um, or in my or I used to I did not know how to exist exactly around people. So yeah, and then in 2020 I was back in India, and I reached out for an ADHD diagnosis again. My therapist in India denied the diagnosis and said I may not have ADHD. If I did, I would have got to know about it in my childhood itself. She suggested a BPD diagnosis based on abandonment issues because when I was going to talk to my therapist here, my major challenge was I feel rejected a lot. I feel abandoned a lot, and I could not regulate my emotions well. So, um, but then I was misdiagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and I was consistently in therapy since I was working on my borderline traits, and I was also put on a medication for anxiety. But clearly, nothing was working out for me. My challenges were not gone. I was still struggling to finish my tasks, or um, with the kind of sensory overload or overwhelm that I used to live with. Uh, that did not go away, and I dropped out of therapy. I dropped out of medication as well. And Clearly I was not convinced on my borderline personality disorder diagnosis, my BPD diagnosis. Soon the meltdowns also began, and I changed my therapist to challenge the diagnosis itself. This therapist has rejected my ADHD diagnosis again, on the premise that even if I'm able to organize my wardrobe once in a while, and I sit straight through therapy sessions, that means I cannot be an ADHDer. Well, again, I didn't know what to do. I let go of couple of years. Then recently, this year in 2023, I started connecting to neurodivergent folks online on Instagram, people who were self advocating, and the discourse that was created. I decided that I would like to again go for the diagnosis, and especially I started talking to people who were diagnosed as adults. I made notes of struggles that I face at work, at home, and in my interpersonal relationships. That's when I also self diagnosed myself with autism. Mm, but my search for the mental health professional who was ready to consider me for the ADHD diagnosis and autism diagnosis continued. I kept looking for people who would look at it also from a gender affirming lens. And finally, this April, after 3 years of my BPD diagnosis, I was considered for the ADHD diagnosis. uh, in the process, I kept saying that I feel like I'm slow, I do not understand things like how fast my peers and my workmates do. And uh, so with all the challenges alongside ADHD, we came to understand that I also live with auditory processing disorder. That means that physically I can hear people, but I just can't understand what they are saying. My brain processes things a bit slower. I need time. So yeah, and then the person who gave me ADHD diagnosis and auditory processing plus PTSD did not consider me for autism diagnosis at all. She said I may be fidgety, but I was friendly in the sessions, and I also have a sense of perspective while communicating. So I do not qualify for the diagnosis. And I've also been asked why I need the diagnosis anyway. I will be treated as a neurodivergent, so I'll get the same accommodation. So why do I need that diagnosis? So yeah, it has been a journey.
I have so many thoughts, after hearing this. First of all, I'm so sorry that you had to go through such a long journey. And yeah, I've been looking for help since 2012. So that's almost what, more than 12 years, 11 years. Yeah. And nobody could identify. So they gave me all sorts of pills. I was on pills for 7 8 years, anxiety, depression, migraine, everything. And nobody was able to figure it out. And then I just stopped it on my own without consulting anyone when I went for my master's outside, like abroad. And again, those things, like they didn't go away. Those challenges always remained. And this feeling that they say, that the abandoned issues, like imagine being treated as a misfit everywhere, wherever you go, not being able to relate to other people, not being able to relate to your peers. You are bound to feel like a misfit. You're bound to feel, rejected. So why is that even used as a way to pathologize us is something that really bothers me. How it's all seen from a very biomedical model. And the fact that, like as women, who are people who are socialized as women in our society, so we are told to, behave in a certain way, do certain things, be polite and all that. And like even the diagnoses, they happen when we pose as a challenge for others. So with boys it's more like, they are boys, they will be like that, so that is considered. But for girls, we are just forced to adhere to the rules and social expectations. And then, like, when we face challenges, they are invalidated. And like, yeah, the entire system just somehow works against us. And yeah, it's I don't know what to say. The thing about mental health professionals is that I don't think many of them come from lived experiences. Most of them come from, I don't know, like from a very pathological lens. So it's very difficult to get affirming care. And someone whose internal self is fractured and they are looking for answers, instead of helping them or being like sensitive towards it, they just end up um, furthering the trauma. And this is really sad. um, I don't know what else to say. But you also mentioned, like, how you connected with people over Instagram, because you wanted to learn more about, like, about their experiences, how they're navigating workplace. And I think we also connected during that time. Like, I also got my official diagnosis in June. Yeah. Uh, May or June, I forgot. So yeah, and it's been like very fresh for me as well, though I was like, I had self discovered it, but I still haven't processed my diagnosis. And the thing about accommodations is that you have to see it from a rights based perspective. It's not like you have to disclose your neurodivergence in order to get accommodations. Those should be universal, those policies should be universal. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So that brings me to the next question: what are some of the challenges that you face at the workplace as a neurodivergent person, and how are you navigating them right now?
Yeah, I think my diagnosis was triggered because of the challenges I face at work. So I had a meltdown. That was this April. I had a meltdown at work while giving a presentation due to sensory overload. We were already 3 days into the annual meeting, and by the time I was supposed to present, my teammates wanted me to speak fast, but processing and speaking and making sense of all that was going on the screen put me through the breakdown. And I, for the first time, said out loud that I do not function like this. I am a neurodivergent. My needs are not met here. And I think I survived my past jobs because of masking to an extent that I go through burnouts now. I can't mask anymore, or I'm at least what from where I can see, I'm losing uh, the capacity within that I had before to mask on a certain level. It has a severe impact on my mental health. It has it has a huge impact on my every aspect of life. It's clearly a snowball effect on my every aspect of life. So I speak from the space of a neurodivergent Muslim woman. I sail through every day being penalized for not subscribing to this victim based narrative. I have been also told that, feedback, I've been once told that I have an activist approach and that might intimidate people. What I was trying to do is just self advocate for my needs. This clearly shows that how my gender and my disability are intersectional and it cannot be seen away from each other. So to speak, I haven't yet talked about my queer identity at work. I do not feel safe yet to be out there. But yeah, in the face of hiring people from marginalized sections, we do have policies that are being created now. But in the organizations. I have been working in the development sector for a while now, and but about the work that is required in creating these institutional environments, I've been observing that there are only a few leaders and across positions and allies that are ready for the emotional labor, which is required to build a space for someone to self advocate, and also a holistic need based environment to thrive, you know. So I do want to take accommodations, but I am afraid that I don't know how. It's really new to me as well, navigating this entire uh, uh, navigating through the diagnosis, and then currently undergoing autism diagnosis, and waiting. I was waiting for applying for the accommodations at work, but but I know now uh, I cannot wait that long. I need support. And for example, filling water bottles at work during long workshops is a daunting task for me. I can't get up and fill my bottle. There's already a lot going on in the room, the lights, the fan, people talking, breaks where people catch up and small talk. And eating alone is seen as a quality of not being a good leader. So I'm always masking. And it's a, it's quite a, it quite put me back from the kind of participation I want to show in these workshops. I feel like I could be more creative if I had I had a better support. And at home, I pay my domestic help to fill those water bottles so that I can function. There were days when I didn't take help and I went straight for days without drinking water. I always wonder, how do I ask for a filled water bottle that goes for an entire day, and it can it be an accommodation? I used to think a lot until recently I realized that it is not unreasonable to ask for such a support. This is just an internalized ableism uh, that comes through, and I have been changing my own narratives about myself and trying to be more self compassionate. Um, mm, uh, even then, I struggle to make people understand what task. Even like sometimes I also go through task paralysis, and it has been there since I was a kid. Growing up, I have always had this, and I did not have the term or vocabulary for it, but now I do after the diagnosis. I know what I go through, what exactly it means. But when I have a sensory overload and how it disables me, it is really hard for me to explain it to someone else, especially at work, because it is seen as a personal challenge that I go through, and there are few people who do understand it, but then there's unconscious bias that takes away my freedom to make decisions independently, and yeah, so
Yeah, I agree and I relate to that a lot. And even people, they think that accommodations are just a favor. Well, that's not the case. People talk about equity, but they don't understand equity from the disability justice lens. These are things that we need. And like you said, I masked so much that I burnt out. I burnt out. I know this is also coming from a place of privilege. When I finally said it out loud, I can't mask anymore. It's hampering my health, my mental well being, and I just went all out. And I was not sure if anybody will give me work because there are so many stereotypes. And I've been a very different person since I started unmasking, and I can't mask anymore. Like I rock back and forth a lot. Like I stim. Previously, I used to just suppress them or fidget with my hands. But like I feel most comfortable when I'm rocking. Like that suits me the most. So now I do it, and I recently started again, like working full time, and I met my workmates. And I think the liberation that you talked about, I experienced that. I was very scared how people would react, how they would see me. But yeah, like being accepted, being true to myself was liberatory. And I think I got lucky in that regard. So yeah, it's just such a tricky field, because once you open up, you might be discriminated against, which has also happened in the past, which is why I was very scared. But this time I realized that if I don't, I'll just end up hurting myself more and more. So I just went all out. And about, what you said about water, I forget eating and drinking. Like, during my diagnosis, the professional told me, Soumya, just put a 45-minute alarm in your watch or phone or whatever. So you do a body check. Like, are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Do you want to go to the loo? Because sometimes, especially when people come into houses to our house unannounced, I don't know why, but my brain like sees them as a threat. So I don't even go out. Even if I have to use the loo, I wouldn't go out, because I'm so scared of, like, social interactions. I don't know what to say. I have to script. So these are things that I realized through my diagnosis procedure. I had no idea how I was surviving life like this without any support, without any understanding. And I don't know. I just look back. It's not like it's changed a lot now. It's like all better. But I, I feel surprised that I made it even so far without any sort of support, and the consequence of it has been like, it's been terrible on my health. But yeah, you mentioned briefly about, your childhood experiences. So could you tell us more about your childhood experiences as an undiagnosed neurodivergent person? And yeah, what was it like without, like, yeah, it's just, how did you navigate it?
Yeah, I think just to add to what you said, even sometimes I think how I am alive and how did I make it so far. Imagine for someone to think it that way. It is yeah, I can relate so much there. Um anyway, so yeah, my childhood has been quite the places I do not want to go back at this time, if even if in writing or talking about it. But then during diagnosis, uh, I had to go back again and again and think about it, what where my experience is and how did I navigate through it a lot. And I always struggled with being overwhelmed in classrooms. I went to school early to sit on the first bench. That helped me cope with the voices of my teacher that wouldn't have static in the background, so that I can hear properly. Because of auditory processing, it's really hard for me to understand what someone is saying, or even make sense of it in the time which is stipulated in the classrooms. Seeing so many people move and talk to each other, the sound of fans and visuals on the blackboard, teacher dictating notes at the same time while drawing the diagram. And the expectation was to finish notes as she dictates, or and draw the diagrams in the book right away, move on to other topic in Godspeed by how it is working in the classrooms. I've always had struggles in school and college, in my graduation. So I've always had incomplete notes and was out of class. I was punished a lot. And even for the audits that happened, for the book completion, I knew I would be punished, but I still couldn't finish them. I just couldn't, because now I am way behind everyone else in my classroom, and picking up on that would be impossible for me. So um, Yeah, there are times when the rotations happened. That was the worst times in my life when I had to sit on the last bench. That's when I used to zone out a lot. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stigma associated, even how I used to move my body or sit on bench with my other mates. Like, I was told that I had a spring in my body. It used to be a complaint about me. In the matter of 10 minutes, I changed my positions at least thrice. I can't sit straight. Even now, I can't sit straight. I need to move. And to fit in and not be bullied in school, I used to control my body, and my entire focus was on behaving like as a well mannered girl who doesn't laugh. I used to laugh loudly. I still do. I really laugh loud, and I love that about me, I guess now. But growing up, I used to suppress that about me. And if someone talks to me and I really like something, I used to talk a lot. I could go on and on about something that I like, and especially sports. I loved playing sports. I followed badminton, volleyball, and but I did not have a cue about when to stop speaking about these topics, which the other person is also interested. But I was annoying because of that, and I was told that I'm annoying. And sometimes I've heard that there's a gossip about me that I'm annoying. So yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges I see I have had in a school setting. Outside school, at home, there was a bit more different environment. I uh, i mean uh, when I look back now, my entire life revolved around my father. And this started as soon as I think I was 4 years old. He had a mental illness. There was a lot of domestic violence at home, and later we understood my father was responding to the voices he would hear from someone non-existent, and blame me and my mother and throw physical violence at us a lot. So, growing up in a really small place, everyone talks about what's going on in other families, and uh, people used to say that my father may have had some evil got into him. Initial years, my grandfather took him to dargahs and spiritual and religious leaders who could give him some insight. I don't know where exactly he sought this guidance, but finally he realized that my father needed a mental health professional, so which was quite 60 kilometers away from my town. We lived in extreme poverty, so even going there, hiring, because he was not physically also in control. My father, we had to sometimes tie him so that he would like not I mean, if he got angry or if nothing worked out is in his way, he would just slap out of nowhere. So yeah, so it was really expensive to take him out of the town and also show him to the doctor, but we all somehow managed to do that. So yeah, and then I tried to get to know my father, his doctor recently, but I could not figure out the reports exactly what was it. But uh, from what I've heard from my relatives, that my father had schizophrenia, and I have witnessed how he used to hear voices and respond to them and talk to himself, and he used to also pace a lot walking. So my focus was to be not like him, because a lot of my traits, like walking fast, because that's how I stim sometimes. And I sometimes talk to myself just to answer certain things, or there's all these things I felt like my father has shown, and I did not want to be like him, or I did not want to be seen as crazy, so I used to hide my traits a lot. So the stigma around his mental illness has affected my diagnosis, I feel, a lot more growing up. Mm, and there are so many more things. I think my grandfather, who fed me to this traditional standards of an ideal Muslim girl. He wanted me to cover my full body, have a modest clothing style. I was of a I am I grew up with four brothers, so I mostly wore shorts and t-shirts like how my brother wore, and I hated the ornaments on my body anyway, and the clothes on my skin. I am really choosy about the kind of clothes now I wear, but back then there was not much option. So, but then still I could wear shorts so that I don't have, and t-shirts which are really baggy, so I don't have to feel the pressure on my skin a lot about, or the rough cloth. I don't have to feel that on my body a lot. I really do not like the touch of clothes on my legs. Even when I had pajamas, like the full pajamas, I used to cut them short because I really couldn't bear them. So uh, yeah, there were days though when I used to, like, pull off these clothes, and but there used to be a lot of sensory overload for me. I used to feel really uncomfortable. I don't know. uh, I would never want to feel that way again. So yeah, and like, but then the image that I had at home growing up, because of all this, is was of a rebellious and entitled kid who does not listen to anyone. And now when I look back, I fought really hard to wear what I prefer. Like, my grandfather also bought me a pink satin dress when he went for Hajj. Although I love dresses, the material of this dress made me feel like my body is so stuck in it, and it it came out of, it just can't, like, my body can't come out of that apparel. So yeah, but I did wear it, just to make sure that my grandfather think of me as a good girl, or my family thought of me as a good girl. And yeah.
I'm feeling, I can't really put my finger on what exactly I'm feeling because, like, even understanding my feelings, it takes a lot of time and effort because of, yes, alexithymia. But I've been in a very dark place, and just like listening to this bit of conversation, I can already relate to you so much. And I just found myself smiling when you were sharing these things. I was like one of those good students at school, but I really struggled with notes, and I never admitted it because I don't like admitting that this is troubling me. So like asking someone else, hey, I missed this, can you show it to me? Because the teachers, they are speaking, they are writing, they are drawing, and it's so fast. And I just even if my notes were complete, I would like go around the classroom, whatever I have missed, and try to fill it in. So I relate to that. And later on, like years later, I realized that okay, I process things a little slow. It takes me some time. I can't process like how people do. I can't watch anything without subtitles. So nothing at all. And I used to think, why is it the case? And then I realized, okay, I process things a little differently. So even if I can hear, I just zone out. So I need subtitles in order to watch something. And and about clothes, like you said, so many labels have been given to me because of my sensory issues. um like I can't wear clothes with tags. I wear my my undergarments are from a very specific company which I've been using for 15-16 years now. Recently I tried to change it, but then no, again I went back to the same company. My like the clothes that I wear at home, I've been wearing them for 5-6 years now. Like they are torn, but they are comfortable, and people keep like asking me, okay, you're working, you're earning, at least spend on yourself. But like that's not where I'm coming from. It just gives me comfort. Same with food also. Like it's not like people think, why are you just eating bread? But that's like my comfort food. That's my safe food. And I don't like having surprises. I just know these things are familiar, and it gives me a sense of safety in a world which is like constantly changing, and there's so much uncertainty, all of that. So yeah, I relate to all of that so much. And what you said about walking, I pace a lot. I can't stand still. If I am like talking about something, a couple of months ago I went for this workshop that I was delivering at a university, and I was pacing the entire time, and I told it in the brief itself, like, hey, that's just me. I don't mean to be offensive or rude towards anyone, but that's just how I process. And yeah, like I also walk very fast. And like as a kid, I've been told by so many people, like, behave like a girl. I can't wear any jewelry, like, more than, like, say, an hour. I can't wear imitation jewelry. Like people wear it for days. I can't wear it. I wear the same ones, like ear studs, like for years and years and years. And I can't wear bangles. I can't wear anklets. I couldn't even like tolerate wearing socks when I was in school. And like everyone, like my maternal grandmother, even now my mom, they are like, have some what womanly traits, and I'm like, that's just not me. It's just not comfortable. It's itchy. Like I can't even put my hair down. It's so annoying. Like the sensory issues, they cause me like so much overwhelm. I can't even begin to express it. But yeah, just whatever you said, I related to it like so much. um the only thing I think, I masked so much in school that you know um so nobody realized that I was struggling internally, even like through university, through college. I was masking so badly that nobody realized I was struggling. Everybody just thought it's depression, but even I didn't have the understanding or the language to articulate what I was going through until like I just had like complete breakdowns. And I remember one specific day when I was last year when I was at another place doing a full time job. I was on leave, and then all of a sudden, people on Monday, people started like asking me for stuff, like tasks, all of a sudden, and I was so overwhelmed. I started crying, and then later on, I realized that it's a meltdown. I couldn't work that day. So sensory overload is always a challenge for me, and I'm still trying to figure it out. Giving my body rest, because previously I used to think, because of the conditioning and how people say, right, that I'm just being lazy. But I realized that I'm constantly fighting against a system which is not built for me. So I'm bound to feel tired, and it's okay if I want to rest, you know. And you spoke about stigma that is attached with mental illnesses, with neurodivergence, and language plays such an important role in this. How we internalize this conditioning, crazy, um, mad. There's just so much ableism when people don't adhere to the socially accepted quote unquote norms. And what do you think? How can language help in the acceptance of neurodiversity? Like, where should we start from? I know, like, like so many websites come up with these lists that these are words we shouldn't use because these are rooted in ableist notions. But I feel, after being in this space for so many years, like able-bodied people don't even spare that thought. Like they use this ableist term so casually without realizing the impact of it. Like some weeks ago I saw a poster on anti-fascism, and the word blind was used very casually in a, like, like, what the situation is like, right? So like the authorities who should be accountable are not listening, or even if they're listening, they're not speaking up about it. So words like blind and dumb are used in that context, that the leaders are not listening and speaking up, but they're not realizing how ableist that is. So what are your thoughts? How do you see, how can we use language in order to foster acceptance and spread awareness about neurodivergence and mental health?
For me, honestly, not just about neurodivergence, I would say, but also in the space of from the intersectional lens, if we are looking at the language and how it empowers, it can have the power to enable. Is where I come from. For the longest, I did not have. This understanding of uh, you know affirming way of putting myself across to people. So the moment my language changed for myself, like the labels that I chose, it has helped me, uh, it has liberated me in a way, and it has helped me go out there and reclaim the space for myself. The language and uh, how it can shift the narrative from the stigma, or like stigmatized way of looking at neurodiversity, to shifting it towards uh, creating a strength based, and how you know how the world is created for everyone in it, and not just yeah. So I don't know exactly how to make sense of it yet. I have been thinking, I have been using the language for myself and being aware of it, but um, I I don't know where that change for neurodivergence or for disability uh, can start. It has to. Uh, I mean, it can start with the self advocacy. It can start with a lot of discourse that is coming in, with a lot of people talking about it. But eventually, I think I have seen those who go through that experience is using the language, but those around me who are not, I mean, going through the experiences at work or in other places. uh, I have not seen people use the language very well. At least I work in the development sector, and uh, we are so pro bringing people in and being inclusive. But are we ready with the kind of capacity building that is required to, and the languages that we use and the ableist way of looking at these things? I don't think so. Now, there are many times I thought the answer to this could be meeting people where they are, understanding their intentions. I did all of the analysis to understand, can it work better this way? But honestly, we have to have that readiness amongst people to let go of the ableist way of looking at it. And I have been also reading about autism since, a little bit about autism since I was undergoing the diagnosis. And I think moving from that narrative of fixing someone to, um, to actually, um, uh, I mean, how do I say this, to be to be around people and say one can exist in any many ways, and uh, my brain can function in different ways, and uh, people are different and they can coexist together. Uh, but while to do so, I think uh, it is not going to happen just by saying that in policies. It has to come from the practices of language, or talking to that person. And there is a possibility, if there is no language, there is no vocabulary. Like, for example, previously when people started using pronouns, I think there were a lot of mistakes people make, and then they are sorry about it, and then uh, And then that entire burden or the guilt is on the person who is actually expecting the right pronouns. Similarly, that is what is happening now. But then, even if the language is not there, then what in terms of practices, what goes in it? I think it is very much possible to not cross boundaries and understand things from a consent, with a consent, and still be able to understand where we can make that change. I think that willingness to create that space is really important in whatever context it is, whether it is at work or outside. If we are how we are bringing ourselves to others. So yeah, I don't know much about language, how because I also come from a place where language was not accessible to me. Uh, the discourse was not accessible to me. Coming from a tech background to moving to development sector has changed a lot of ways that I look at the world now. But I think I was away from a lot of. I was not accepted in a lot of groups. I was not accepted in many ways because of the language itself. But now the moment that I shift my language, I am taken inside. Um, but there are still people who are outside the circle I see, and it is just because of the language. So I'm taking language as a very literal, in a really literal way. So I think it's also a very elitist way of looking at it. Uh, but I'm not sure where whether um, whether that is not reaching the people it should. Then the kind of narratives that we are trying to, or the stigma that we are trying to break through language and through uh, uh, you know yeah.
No, I agree. Like I also come from a place where this was, be it the queer discourse, be it like, neurodivergence or even like disability justice, it was not at all accessible to me. So, and like you said, it's elitist, right? That like my mother tongue is Odia, so these words don't even exist in Odia. So for the longest time, I didn't know how to talk about it with my mom, for example. So that is there. And like a while back, I tried to do a workshop with people in Odisha, with the community, and it was so difficult to say, explain certain things, and it clearly, like, brought out like how elitist the whole discourse is. So my way has been like to talk more about feelings, that how a certain word makes me feel, what's the impact like. So from a very empathetic point of view, from a feelings point of view, how can I, even if I don't have the vocabulary, how can I communicate my feelings to the other person in whatever language that they're able to understand it. I don't know how effective that will be. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. um, and I also see, there's a lot of difference. Like I've been also in the development sector for some time now, so I've seen this difference. Like, it doesn't even occur to them like how able-bodied people just exclude disabled people, and but you see disabled people trying to bridge that gap all the time. And I see this most with image descriptions, like how people just forget, and then there's a disabled person who just like pitches in. So yeah, I just see these tiny occurrences and I wonder what can we do to, we talk about the justice, right? Feminist justice, intersectional feminist justice. So how do we include disability, justice into that? How do we integrate that? So yeah, I'm still figuring it out. Any parting thoughts, Jasmine?
Yeah, I think this has been this podcast has got me thinking a lot about my own experiences, and the kind of work I want to do for the community after this. Because when you said in the there are times when we do not uh, have words to say in the local languages or regional languages that we use. Probably I would go back and think about it. And also, at this time, my intention is to spend time in understanding other disabilities that I don't know about, or uh, or to be able to create policies around that at work. My I mean, I am going to also apply for accommodations at work this month, although there is no policy that exists at the time which speaks about disability rights and neurodivergence and learning disabilities explicitly. But I have pitched about it. Now, when I look back, I would also like to see that speaks about other languages as well, where there is information that is to people who may or may not work with us in the grassroots, but and may or may not have access to English language and may not understand these terminologies. So now it brings me back to not only reaching out to people while creating the policy, uh, mm, not reaching out to only English speaking crowd, and people who are self advocating, and the names that are at this point going on. Mm, um, there are so many people who have been putting efforts in this space now, and I really wanted to reach out to them and work on the policy in collaboration. But now I feel like it's also important to expand that space and look into the rural areas and other regional aspects and politics of it while creating the policy itself, that may make it much more open for us to understand what all can be where all can we get more intersectional and bring more representation maybe. So yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that, Jasmine. All the very best for this. And yeah, it was lovely exploring all this with you. I found so much relatability, and I hope you also felt somewhat validated in the process. So, thank you once again for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Soumya. And it has definitely been a place where I felt heard and seen. And I really look back to my diagnosis and say now, oh yeah, this is who I am, and I'm gonna take that back from here. So yeah, yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that. Thanks again. If you're hearing this message, you have listened to the entire episode. For that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You can listen to Atypical Dikkatein on Spotify, and if you want to reach out to me, your host, Samya, check out the Linktree link in the description. See ya!